I think in a lot of ways, the Democrats and the media, because they so hate the idea of a real border, are engaging in a kind of blood libel against ICE agents. They're accusing them of engaging in crimes. They're accusing them of being part of the Gestapo. They're actually inciting violence against our law enforcement. They know exactly what they're doing, and now it's time to stop.
Vice President J.D. Vance sat down with Laura Ingraham on Fox News to discuss how and why the left just keeps inciting political violence. So as you heard there, he accused the left of engaging in blood libel against ICE agents because apparently the left hates borders. That's what he said. So just a reminder, blood libel is a very inflammatory thing to accuse someone of, and it's an interesting choice for a vice president who is part of an administration that is beholden to Israel to bring up. So blood libel refers to something that Jewish people used to be accused of. Specifically in the medieval times, it's the alleged act of using the blood of Christians, usually Christian children, in Jewish rituals. So it's a very anti-Semitic term, and it gained some traction recently when Trump invoked the horror of the invisible enemy when he was referring to COVID in April of 2020. So that was said to be an anti-Semitic dog whistle at the time. And we did see a rise in anti-Semitism in this country during the pandemic, especially in those earlier days, including we saw protesters in Ohio who claimed that Jewish people were the quote unquote real plague. So Trump used the term a second time just 2 days after he used it the first time in April 2020, saying that the country had a great chance for an economic bounce back, quote, when the invisible enemy is gone. So maybe he was talking about COVID, but also maybe not COVID. So Trump and Republicans have been accused of engaging in blood libel repeatedly throughout the years, specifically anytime they try to blame a problem on any one particular group of people, like the immigrants, or even more narrow groups of immigrants, like, for example, the Venezuelans or the Haitians. So now JD Vance is trying to say that it's actually the left that is doing the blood libel, and we're doing it against ICE. So let's hear more from the interview before we go on. This is his response to Ingraham's question about violent rhetoric that is being quote unquote spewed from the left.
So what's your message to Democrats who keep spewing this type of violent rhetoric?
Well, it's to look in the mirror and stop this craziness, or you're going to get somebody killed. In fact, I think a lot of them already have gotten somebody killed, namely my friend Charlie Kirk and a number of other folks as well. If you look at, it's not just the Democrats, Laura, the media is participating in this. I saw a story on NBC News just a couple of days ago, right before the ICE shooting in Dallas, and they were effectively accusing ICE of mistreating a 5-year-old child. Now, it turned out that story was completely fake, but if you read that headline and you were a crazy person, I could see how that could incite you to violence. So I think in a lot of ways, the Democrats and the media, because they so hate the idea of a real border, are engaging in a kind of blood libel against ICE agents. They're accusing them of engaging in crimes. They're accusing them of being part of the Gestapo. They're actually inciting violence against our law enforcement. They know exactly what they're doing, and now it's time to stop.
Well, the vice president had some suggestions for the left and specifically what we can do to stop all of the senseless violence that the left and only the left is apparently inciting and perpetuating. Take a look.
Now, the shooting of yesterday, it turns out that the people who were killed were actually detainees, not ICE agents. I'm obviously glad that ICE agents weren't killed in that attack, but saddened that these detainees were killed, because though we don't want illegal aliens in our country, we also don't want them being shot at by crazy left-wing terrorists, which is, I think, what happened yesterday in Dallas. So all of this should have the left stepping back and saying, how can we actually contribute to a more reasonable conversation? Yes, we can criticize JD Vance's and Donald Trump's views on immigration, but we're not going to attack the law enforcement with libel and lies. We're going to make this a reasonable policy disagreement. I think that's how you tone down the rhetoric. Unfortunately, the Democrats show no willingness to do that. But again, if they don't stop, they're going to get more people killed.
All right, so that was very accusatory, which is interesting because he's saying that the left, because of the things that we're saying and the rhetoric that we are allegedly directing at these various individuals, that's the reason why there's all this violence. But then he's saying, like, you need to stop or else something's gonna happen and more people are gonna die and it's going to be the left's fault. And I think that's a very dangerous thing for the vice president, no less, to preempt to the nation, right? Jackson, I want to start with you on this one. We're hearing a lot of this rhetoric coming from the Trump administration, from people like the president and the vice president, from the talking heads on Fox News, and generally on right-wing social media, things like that. And they're saying the left is so violent, they are inciting violence, they love the violence, they love to see it, they're celebrating violence whenever it's happening. But at the same time, we're seeing that, on the right, they accuse the left of inciting Charlie Kirk's assassination, his murder, before they had any idea who the shooter was. And a lot of people were saying that's weird that you called them out before you even knew who the shooter was, including people on the right were saying that was weird. Whenever we had this more recent shooting in Dallas at the ICE facility, there were some very sketchy things that came out that came directly from the FBI director when he was just tweeting things that probably you shouldn't be tweeting to the public in the middle of an ongoing active investigation. But people on both sides of the political aisle and the political ideological aisle were saying that's a little sketchy too. So things are just not quite adding up. And I wonder, it's hard to gauge how prevalent these ideas are whenever you're looking and in certain corners of the internet. You can get stuck in one corner and it seems one way, but then you get lost in another corner and you're like, oh no, these people really are buying everything that they're putting out there. So I was just wondering, Jackson, what have you been picking up as far as, is this rhetoric sticking the way that the Trump administration really seems to want it to stick?
I don't think so. And the reason I don't think that it is because at the end of the day, things like the economy are continuously getting worse, and things that people can't ignore in their everyday lives are continuing to spiral. So, for instance, like tariffs and inflation, wholesale vegetable prices up, the price of beef, coffee, different types of imported goods being up, millions of people potentially about to lose their access to SNAP benefits. The system completely changing. Like people who had work requirements, they used to only go up. They used to be from ages 18 to 54. Now it goes up to 64. Every month, people who get SNAP benefits can deduct their utility costs from that. Now you can no longer deduct your internet expenses. Veterans are no longer excluded from work requirements. Homeless people are no longer excluded. Oh, and look, the Department of Agriculture, they're not gonna do like basically every quarter they count like how many people are hungry and have good access to food. They're stopping that report. So while they're beefing up this rhetoric about, oh, look at the left, the end of the day, people are going to notice that their groceries are more expensive. They're going to notice that they don't have access to as many of the benefits that they previously did. Now, I'm not saying that this rhetoric has absolutely no impact whatsoever. But at the same time, you can look at things like Trump's approval rate going down, and Democrats have been winning in special elections pretty consistently. So I think those types of things speak volumes as well.
Look, I think we have to just keep telling the truth when other people aren't. And that includes, in this case, the vice president. Blood libel is a anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. I mean, it's a disgusting term to use that, Jews drink the blood of Christian children. It's disgusting. And it's not true. And this whole thing about how the left is just so violent, I don't even mind if you don't label left or right. There's some people who are over the top in their instability, because I think at this point we may all be unstable after what we've all experienced trauma. I'll put it to you that way, and maybe I'll speak for myself. But it's been 10 plus years of this. Where the lie becomes the truth, and it's ridiculous. And by the way, this is the administration that wants to protect Jewish students on college campuses, which sounds like a noble cause, except that's not really what they were doing. It's not what they were doing. And to roll out this kind of rhetoric and try to get people to believe it. And yeah, there are some people who are going to believe it. It's a sicko behavior, and we have to just keep talking about it. And no, I agree with Jackson. No, I don't think that people are going to buy it wholesale. but enough people will.
Yeah, I find it very ironic that they're coming for the left, the left as they say, and they're saying, your rhetoric is so dangerous. This is what we've been saying about them for this whole time. And then in that statement, saying how dangerous we are for calling ICE a Gestapo, even though they're functioning just like that, in the same breath, he accuses the left of blood libel. Like it really is appalling how, we've always been saying that these words have meaning and they have weight to them, and you have to be careful about these words whenever you throw them around, because they do have meaning and people will internalize them and they will respond to them in a certain way. And it's very, I think, just hypocritical of somebody like JD Vance to come out here and accuse the left of blood libel because we're speaking out against something that, I mean, there's still how many people are missing from Alligator Alcatraz, like what is going on, and if we speak out against that, then we're committing blood libel. It doesn't make any sense. And he's saying, oh, they just hate borders. That is so far from the truth of all of this, and like he's either being intentionally obtuse or, he's just lying to people. So also, Sharon, you mentioned that it was, it's been over 10 years of this. We are all very tired. We are exhausted. This is not like a state that any of us are supposed to exist in, especially not for that long. And I remember when it first started, over 10 years ago, and we were just like, God, like, when is this gonna be over? We're still in it, and even now, as some people on the right are starting to come around, and it is very much as what Jackson was saying, in response to the fact that they're not seeing their grocery prices go down. They're seeing their benefits being taken away. Their jobs are less stable than they were before. The tariffs keep coming. Trump is now saying that we're gonna have a 50% tariff on IKEA furniture going into October. Like, who is that gonna help or hurt? Like, let's be real. And all these things are happening. So whenever these people start to come around on the left, it can be very, very hard to say, sure, come on to our side, because we are still dealing with the trauma of, having to deal with all of this like mass psychosis that this country has been under for the last 10 years. And, I feel like even before all of the Trumpiness of this country happened, like even the terms like radical left, like that wasn't a thing that we heard all the time, like it just wasn't. It was just a different time, and we were a different country back then. So anyway,
can I say one thing just real quick? Listen, at some point, they figured out this little formula, right? It used to be that if you told these just full-faced lies, you look crazy, okay? And you can't really go back to your community. I remember the Long Island massacre shooter, Colin Ferguson. And I don't know if other people remember, but I remember watching the trial where he represented himself. And he questioned his victims who were fortunate enough to survive. And one by one, they pointed back at him when he asked them questions like, well, who shot you? And they'd say, you shot me. I watched you load the gun, reload. Like it was a ridiculous exercise. And so at some point, you have the vice president here basically saying the opposite. The side that's doing it is actually saying that you're doing it, so that everything becomes flipped upside down. They're stealing the election. Remember that? Look at the side who's trying to suppress the vote. No mail-in ballots, the like, even service people, whatever they're accusing, it's that, I don't know if it's narcissist or, what the diagnosis is, but you can tell what they're up to by how they point the finger and what they say while they're doing it. It's craziness.
Yeah, I was gonna invoke narcissistic abuse and be like, we've all been dealing with that for a decade, but even I don't know, whatever it is, I can't wait for this era of America to be done with.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.